Look up, you see a hole in the tower. Next thing you know, we just see the tower starts to fall. Only Jesus Christ himself can come and tell me that wasn't my mother speaking to me.
Andrea, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me today.
Tell me a little bit about your childhood.
Growing up, my childhood was pretty good for, a little kid growing up in New York. The only difference was me as myself and my siblings, we were primarily raised by my great-grandmother. We stayed with her during the week, and on Saturdays, we went to stay with my mom, who had an apartment on the same block as my grandmother. So we knew that she was close by, but she was always working. My grandmother and I had a really close relationship. She always told me that I would do something great. She always thought I was gonna be this great teacher, because she said, you have a mouth and you want to tell people what to do, and so
let's talk about probably one of the most pivotal days in your life, which was surviving 9/11.
That day, got up, that morning, just like everyone else, got off at Wall Street. We heard this noise. As you walked up, you just see all this paper and debris and things of that nature. Look up, you see a hole in the tower, and it's already talk at that time of a terrorist attack.
Tell me what it felt like when you got outside and there was lots of soot.
We heard like thundering and lightning, but it was the most beautiful, gorgeous day. Next thing you know, we just see the tower starts to fall.
What were you thinking at that point?
I'm dying. At that, literally, I said, I'm going to die, because as the tower is coming down, you just see like rolls of clouds, but it's the building. Someone just yelled, "Run for your lives." It was like a fight for survival. We were just like pushing each other, trying to get into different buildings. To this day, I can probably go to that building in that area and know where that building was, where I was trapped.
So you're trapped in a building?
For about 45 minutes. And by that time, the tower is down. You just hear emergency personnel. I heard someone crying. I remember just like when touching someone's hand, because that's what you couldn't see because everything was dark. You could just smell and hear. I just kept saying, I just smelled death, because I just kept thinking, I'm gonna die. If I get out of here, I have to remember this date. What's today? That's what, to me, 9/11, it comes down to a lot of like smells and things that I heard that day. And it's like a scary feeling when you're in a place when you're such a strong person, but there's an opportunity where you have no control over what's going on to you or around you. And it humbles you. Like,
so you felt humbled?
I felt humbled in that moment because I had no control over what was going to happen.
Mom's 54 years old and she has a stroke.
One day I came home from work, and my mom, she had retired at 51. It was normal for me to come home from work. I was like, oh, Mom, she's sleeping. I was like, oh, she's been sleeping for about like the last 5 hours. So I went and checked on her. I ended up taking her to the hospital emergency, and they stated that she had had like 3 mini strokes. The stroke led to other complications. The biggest thing was they wanted to cut off both her legs, and I refused to let them cut off both her legs. I don't just take everything at face value.
Sure.
And that was probably one of the reasons why my mom put me in charge of her health, and I became her, her advocate. And I believe that was the start. In the end, he just cut off one toe, but my mom, she had to go into assisted living, and it was just too much for her. The night when she took the turn for the worse, I was going to sleep. I heard someone say, Tasha, that's what my family calls me. And I'm like, who's in here? And I cut on a light. And when I cut on a light, the phone rang. It was the doctor stating, your mom has taken a turn for the worse. You and your siblings need to get to the hospital now. Only Jesus Christ himself can come and tell me that wasn't my mother speaking to me. And when we got to the hospital, one of the first things I said, I want someone to pray over her. I believe it was a rabbi. He started the prayer. One brother stayed with her the whole time. She knew what was happening. She was in a coma, but tears was coming out of her eyes. She must have heard us praying over her and saying our goodbyes. She knew. My sister was murdered. She was murdered September 7th, 2011. Two people actually came into her home, one of those people being her kid's father. And she woke up in the middle of the night during an argument of a drug deal going bad. My niece and my nephew, thank God, weren't home at the time. The day that my sister was killed was actually the day that they were due back home. They had went away for the summer to spend time with their grandfather in North Carolina. I don't think I will ever have a conversation more emotional than I did telling my niece, the 6-year-old, and explain to her that she would never see her mom again. It was just,
Sounds brutal.
She cried in my arms. And I think at that point, I probably knew I was gonna have some involvement. Once everything happened, my nephew decided he didn't want to stay. Within 6 months of them being down there, the grandfather died while they were in the house. So they lost their mother and they lost their grandfather. I got official custody from the courts November of 2012.
What's going on today? You've had some unbelievable experiences in your life.
Those experiences are what actually got me to this point today. My niece and my nephew were in foster care. I found out about that and about foster care this past fall. Twice I partnered with iFoster. iFoster, it's an organization that they work with foster kids who are being aged out of the system to give them life skills. I see what I can do there because it's what I'm doing with my niece and my nephew.
You love to connect with kids and teach them life skills.
They can get jobs. Just teach a person how to have an interview and just be able to be who you are. I've been an advocate for so long. I didn't know it started with helping my mom, going through my sister's trial, working with New York City to catch her killer, being an advocate for domestic violence victims, my niece and my nephew, going through the courts to get custody of them. In my everyday life as an HR person.
Comes to you very naturally.
People tell me that.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for talking about your journey to survival.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
These women's stories are so impactful. Arras Sisters creates opportunities for women.